This episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by Cry Havoc. From New York Times #1 best-selling author, Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Rees thriller. Order now.
They were mortaring us from the time I got there until the time we left. SEALs were in a group and we were just sitting on our cots. And then 50 yards away from us within the compound, boom, the lights go off. And we realize, all the leadership from the Army was taken out with one shot.
What is this? What arrived for me? I just saw this about 5 minutes ago, waiting for me here when I got to the podcast studio. Amazing. Gift from you. I have a few things that are gifts from you actually here. But this one showed up today. Mark I U.S. Navy Boarding Axe 1797. What is going on here?
So there's a two parts of history to that specific gift. So that is, obviously a piece of naval history that enlisted men carried to fight the ship, right? So along with that axe came like a little certificate that kind of explains what that axe was and how they used it. But basically the officers, of course, would have their cutlasses and their muskets, and then the enlisted men would have their boarding axes, right? Nice. And their boarding axes would be, the last part of the actual boarding technique, because those are the guys that jump in across the ships to fight the enemy, and that's what they had. Each guy was issued one. So normally a naval enlisted guy back in those days was working the cannons below decks, so they would have their axes next to them, and as cannonballs were coming in and sails were falling down, they would use their boarding axes to cut the ropes, cut the masts, and get them off the ship, because if you can't steer the ship, you're basically dead. Right. So it was a two-use tool. Wow. Right. And then after, they took the other boat, they would jump across and basically hatchet these guys. The other part of this story, which I don't even know if you know it, is that there was two original naval boarding axes up in the CO's office at SEAL Team 6 that I actually procured through the Naval Historical Command for our captain at the time, Pete Van Hoosier. And so those axes were in the hallway leading to the CO's headquarters when you were there. So I'm blowing your whole theme apart, because those hatchets were actually the theme behind the Red Men and the hatchets, because it came from the boarding axes, and they couldn't carry boarding axes on their belts, right? It'll be a little awkward, so they went to the hatchet. So there's a little bit of history for you.
Man, I love that. That is going to have to make it into the book, maybe the next book, because I'm writing it about about Vietnam, 1968. James Rees's father, Tom Rees, is attached to MACV-SOG going into Laos. I'm gonna have to work some of this in. That is amazing. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So yeah, that was handmade, hand forged. So the front part of that blade, where you see where the little teeth are, that was actually used so the guys, as they were picking up rope and debris off the deck, they would actually scrape it on the bottom of the deck and pick it up to get it off the ship. That's how they used it.
No way.
Yeah. And then the end of it obviously was when your hand is wet from either salt water or blood, the end of it, the other end, it would keep it from sliding off. And then you could also use that for popping people on the head as you're, if if you can't get at them.
Oh, I love this.
It's a multi-use tool.
Gosh, I love this. I think it's going to have to replace one of the bows back there. I think it's going to have to go back there. This is just too cool. Amazing. Thank you. This really means so much to me. So thank you so much. Man, that is too cool. And it comes with this. I mean, that's awesome. Gosh. And there's a couple of things here you gave me. Look at this. I mean, this has got to be the most serious coin that I've ever gotten right here. This is yours. Doubles as a weapon right there. Your latest.
You never tell people that. It's a bottle opener.
It's a bottle opener is what I meant to say. You can open a lot of bottles with this thing. But that is solid.
Well, yeah, I always, I have lots of coins, as I'm sure you do. Yeah. And I always they're nice to look at, but I have dual use for them, right?
Exactly.
So it really is a bottle opener. It will open bottles.
I love that.
Amongst other things. So the reason I changed from the double knuckle to a single knuckle, because TSA kept taking them from me at the airport. So I told them it was bottle opener. They didn't believe me. So.
Did you get away with it for a while? Did you get away with it a few times and then
it depends on the airport. Yeah.
Or probably the person.
The single knuckle one, I'll have to send you one, never gets taken. So
interesting. Yeah, I don't have that one.
Just like a bottle opener.
Oh man. Well, I got to get out to see you before too long. And I love how you have the old school symbol right there instead of the full on trident, little nod to history right there. Incredible. I want to talk to you about history because over your last decade now, plus, I mean, you've been immersed in it. But I want to talk to you about that in a minute. And then this is another thing you gave me right here. So this is my
Jack Daniels.
Yeah, exactly right there. And right here it talks about the Navy SEAL Museum right here, Fort Pierce, Florida. The deed is all not the glory.
So I'll give you a little, I have a story for everything, right?
All right, I want to talk a little bit about some of the pistols from my second novel, True Believer. And why are SIG pistols so important to me? That is because I took the 226 right here in its Mark 25 version, downrange on every single deployment in the SEAL teams. And it plays a very major role in both the Terminal List book and television show. And I always had this pistol on my side, so very natural for me to incorporate SIG pistols into the pages of my novels. And I love that SIG pushes boundaries and takes risks. So I started writing True Believer in the summer of 2016. And during that time, this pistol right here, the P365, this one came out. So in the first book, if you remember, James Reese, he carries the Glock 43. And when I get to True Believer, now the 365 is out, and I have a conversation in True Believer. James Reese has spent time learning to live again in Mozambique. He's been recruited by the CIA by his friend Freddie Strain for a mission and is now in Mozambique getting up to speed on some new weaponry. I'll read that right now. Okay, here you've got some handguns. Even though I know you like the Glock, I'd like you to try the new SIG 365, especially for work in low-vis environments. It holds more rounds than your 43. I heard a lot about this during deployment. I'll give it a run, Reese said, immediately impressed by the subcompact pistol. While Reese loved his subcompact G43, the unprecedented 12+1 9mm capacity of the SIG P365, along with its surprisingly smooth striker-fire trigger and night sights, made this one a winner right out of the box. And this is the SIG P320 with upgraded triggers by Bruce Gray, Freddie said, picking up SIG's new 9mm pistol. I think you'll like her. I already like her, Reese said with a smile. SIG had recently won the highly sought-after, nearly decade-long process to replace the Beretta 92F and supply the U.S. Armed Forces with a new advanced pistol variant of the SIG P320, now adopted as the M17, M18. So right there is the M17 and 18 right here. So talking about the 365, nice subcompact pistol right there. This is the one that I carry pretty much every day and absolutely love the P365. There are a lot of variants right now, but back when I wrote this book, there was just one, and that's it right there. For a little more firepower, James Reese opts for the P320. Freddie Strain introduces him to that pistol. And of course, now there are many variations of the P320 pistol. And you can even build your own, like this one, or like this one from the SIG Custom Works shop. And of course, they're being carried by our military downrange and in training as the M17 and M18. Those are the pistols of True Believer.
Yes, our partnership with Jack Daniels begins when I first got to the museum in 2012. Um, I told myself I was going to start the Jack Daniels single barrel program up at the museum
Yeah.
because I had been introduced to it at SEAL Team 6 by one of the Gold Squadron Command Master Chief, and he passed in Extortion 17. And when he died, basically the programs kind of shut down at the command. And when I got to the museum, I said, I'm going to start it up again. So I called Jack Daniels. I get a hold of the same guy that sold the Master Chief his bottle. And since that day, we've sold or purchased and given away 36 barrels of Jack Daniels single barrel.
Wow.
That's 250 something bottles a barrel. Wow. That's a lot of booze.
That is.
So Jack Daniels is actually owned by Brown Forman. It's an American-owned company, and Mrs. Brown actually lives in Vero Beach.
No kidding.
Very good friend of mine.
No
she
way.
supports the museum. It's pretty. It's one of those one link away kind of contact. It's pretty neat.
Oh, that is fantastic. Yeah, Americans, we love our brown water. It's a nice consumable, good business to get into. Let's start. So let's start growing up and work our way back. Is in Jacques Cousteau. I know you were watching those shows, those specials as a kid, and I was too. And this is, I think, for me in the late 70s. I was seeing those, and I can't even remember what channel they were on back then. It was like maybe a midday thing, because there was only 4 channels for us. There was CBS, ABC, NBC, and then the one outlier type channel. Like that was it. 4 channels, maybe PBS, so maybe a 5th. But Jacques Cousteau would somehow end up on one of those channels at some point. And I remember watching those. I watched him with a buddy. We were 5 years old. I remember we didn't have a pool, but he did. And so we'd watch those, and then we'd go to his parents' pool and go in and kind of reenact what we'd seen in those Jacques Cousteau films or specials. And that was an inspiration for you growing up as well. Is that right?
Sure was. I mean, I think it was it was some insurance company that sponsored it, Northwest Mutual
like Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Yeah, Mutual of Omaha. Yeah. So anyway, that was exactly it. Even though growing up in Milwaukee or outside of Milwaukee, we had Lake Michigan, but it was always too cold to swim in. But the show inspired me to want to join the Navy, and I actually thought I wanted to be on a submarine, and thank God that when I walked into the recruiter's office, he basically had a book about Navy SEALs, just a little pamphlet.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember, this is 78. I was 16 years old, and I took it home and said, I went back and I said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to be a Navy SEAL. And the guy looks at me, not having a clue about SEALs or me either. And he's like, okay, because he saw me as the quota, right? He saw an easy quota for him because I was like in and out of there in 15 minutes and ready to sign up, So that's kind of how it all started.
Yep. And I'm going to get to the book here a little bit later, but a lot of these are in here. Amazing book. I love how you wrote this. It's so engaging. And it is the one, the story on Adam Brown is one I recommend to people as well. And people ask me about SEAL books to read. And this here is an amazing book. Everyone should add it to their library. Anyone interested in history and especially for kids like junior high, high school that are in that position that you were in when you were 16, thinking about joining the military, right here. Everybody needs to add this one to your library. A lot of these stories are in there. But interesting, from 1978 to when I showed up at the recruiter in, I think, early 96, not much had changed as far as the recruiter goes. He didn't know much about the SEAL teams at all, the pipeline, how to get in, none of that stuff. He didn't have a pamphlet, but I'd been doing my research for years and years and years and knew about the Dive-Farer program, but this is before the internet. I didn't even have a computer. And in the back of one of the books, and I forget which one it was, maybe the Commandos, I forget which one it was. Anyway, the back of one of the books that came out in the mid 90s, maybe around 94, 95, 96 timeframe, it talked about the Dive-Farer program in there. And so that's how I knew about it. It was very detailed. It was only about a page and a half maybe about it, but it was detailed enough where I knew more than the recruiter. So not much changed between 1978 and 1996 when I came in. You go into class 109.
Correct.
In 1980.
Yep.
Wow. What are your memories of showing up there day one of that, of Class 109, and then specifically Hell Week?
Wow.
Because this is back when it was hard for those listening.
Well, I don't know.
This is back when it was tough.
That's right. That's what 109 was the hardest class.
You might be right.
I don't know what correspondence course you were in.
Exactly.
But, it was definitely the toughest.
Introducing the BCM Mark 15 timepiece. Rugged, purpose-built, American design, Swiss made. Engineered for precision and unwavering reliability. A flat sapphire crystal with dual-layer anti-reflective coating ensures clarity under any conditions. Its unidirectional 60-minute bezel delivers dependable performance when timing counts. Equipped with a satin stainless steel bracelet featuring a secure deployment clasp. Super Luminova X1 illuminates the hand's numerals and hour markers, offering visibility you can trust. With 200 meters of water resistance, the Mark 15 is built to endure. Each model is limited to just 200 pieces worldwide. Available now at BravoCompanyUSA.com.
So that's what, if there's not a team guy that tells you their class wasn't the hardest, then they weren't a good team guy, right? It's just one of those things. You have to believe that in order to keep going. But typically, when I went through, I went to Orlando for boot camp, and then you would go to an A school and learn a skill in the Navy in case you washed out, because it was a win-win for the Navy, as you know. Like 70% of the guys didn't make it, right? So they went to the fleet, and they were usually good performers. So you learned your skill. And in my case, it was a hull technician school in Philadelphia. Wow. So I learned how to weld and firefighting and stuff like that. And then I went right to Coronado. And basically I had about 2 or 3 weeks before training started. And there was no pre-training then. It was just you scrub the floors, clean the toilets, ran errands for, whatever instructor that you thought were gods at the time, whatever they wanted, you did, right? And then basically training started. So there's a big tradition in training where everybody shaves their head before the class starts. So we were doing the same tradition on the beach right in front of the Buds training in Coronado, and got a little carried away and actually grabbed somebody that wasn't going through training. Actually was an active duty officer going through surface warfare training, and shaved his head. And as you can imagine, he wasn't too happy. So the next morning, everybody gets, we all get at attention, and we were just standing there, and all of a sudden the CO for Buds shows up, and he starts yelling at us, and we realized that we were really screwed at that point. He put us in the push-up position for what seemed, it was hours, to be honest with you. There's no, you couldn't do it, right? But he didn't care, and he just kept yelling at it until we all stood up, and he got the officer to walk by each one of us and identify the guy that shaved his head. So everybody was sweating it, right? But I don't think, to this day, I don't think he was ever going to do it. I think it was just a threat.
All right.
But I'm not. Who knows? God knows.
And you have was there a lot of Vietnam veterans that were your instructors at the time? Maybe the command master chief. What was that like to go through Buds with guys who had 10 years earlier, for some less than 10 years earlier, been in the jungles of Southeast Asia? Yeah,
those obviously the Vietnam vets are our mentors from Buds, and then to SEAL Team 2, and then even into SEAL Team 6, because they had the experience, right? They were your idols. They had seen action. It's like, when you join the SEAL teams, that's what you want. So when you have people like that with that kind of experience, you just naturally gravitate to them. So a lot of the things that they developed in Vietnam, find, fix, finish, all the stuff that we still do, all started there. How we kill or capture our prisoners, gain intel to do more operations, all came from Vietnam. So it's a hell of a legacy that those guys, brought to us.
Yeah, coming up with your own intel, running your own sources, and then having it bottom up was something that we didn't really get in training in the late 90s when I came in. It was more of like, hey, you're in training. here's your mission that comes down from higher. And then as soon as September 11th happened, that completely flipped. I can't remember getting anything that came down from higher, maybe a couple times, but for the most part, you're developing those sources. You're developing those patterns of life on different targets and going out, grabbing them, bringing them back, questioning, going out and all that stuff. So, which was when you read the Vietnam books and talk to the guys in Vietnam that were there, that's similar to what they did back then. So it's interesting how they did it there. We kind of lost it in our training for a while, and then we get it back right after 9/11.
No, I agree. I think that's one of the reasons why SEALs excel at, what we do. I mean, it's just a different mindset. We have a whole group of people that do nothing but think of stuff like that. We're not, waiting for somebody to give us orders. We're thinking about, how to get to your next mission. And then the leaders usually agree with it, and then we move ahead.
Yeah. And you get to the end of the buds and you put in your request. There's still UDT at the time, there's SEAL teams, and you request SEAL Team 2 for a couple reasons. One is closer to your home state, and the other because the drinking age is still 18 in Virginia.
Yeah, that's a true story, because I just didn't like the idea of not being able to go out and have a beer in California just because. Yeah. So that was the main. So I requested the 2 UDT teams and SEAL Team 2. Luckily for me at the time, they were forming up SEAL Team 6. So they grabbed all the guys from 2, and then that left openings at 2. So I just slid right in there, which was perfect.
When it says Staccato, it comes with a promise. In any condition, at any moment, this gun is ready, because your life and the lives you protect depend on it. The future of the 2011 begins with the HD line. Narrower grip with no grip safety. You can run your pistol in either hand with fully mirrored controls and ergonomics. Uses widely available, reliable magazines in a variety of capacities, so you can stock up on more mags for less money. Allows common duty optics to be attached directly to the slide instead of to a plate. Staccato, engineered for performance, built for freedom.
And your command master chief is Rudy Bosch.
Yep, that's right. Rudy Bosch. God bless him, man. He was, he'd been there for, I think he ended up doing a total of like 36 years at SEAL Team 2, believe it or not.
Wow.
36 years. So you got to remember, he started out as a scout and raider, or actually, I shouldn't say that, as a naval scout, because we throw around, as running a museum, you got to be careful, right? So, there's scouts and raiders is like ranger school, right? You don't say I'm a ranger school guy. You say I'm an Army Ranger, I'm a Navy SEAL. So when you say scouts and raiders, it was Army, Naval Scouts and Army Raiders, right? Scouts and raiders was actually just the school.
Oh, wow.
So you got to be careful about how you put that out there, at least in my world.
Yes. Okay. So he was a scout.
He was a naval scout, right? Wow. He went through Scouts and Raiders School and the World War II. They dropped the atomic bomb. It shuts down. He ends up on a ship in Tokyo Harbor, guarding a ship out there for like 6 months before they let him off. And he goes back and basically they disbanded Scouts and Raiders, and he joins the UDTs, and does that for a number of years, and then he joins the Navy SEALs in '62 when President Kennedy, started this first 2 SEAL teams. He was on it, so he was part of everything. So he was a Navy SEAL Master Chief longer than I was alive by the time I got to SEAL Team.
That's incredible. And he was in Korea as well, right? He did Korea.
Yeah, he was in every single thing there was. So crazy what that sounds, Did
he pass those things on to you, or was it like through a training department, or?
Not as much as I would have liked it, and I don't think the system was set up.
Right.
As you know, we don't do a very good job teaching our younger guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We teach them how to be SEALs at buds, but then when it comes to advanced training and mission planning, and that's all just coming in now. And how we do that.
Yeah, it's so crazy. The like the leadership training as well. I didn't have anything as far as that goes.
Now you'd be like, I've had enough.
Enough. Exactly. But yeah, when you think of Rudy Bosch and what he saw during his time in the SEAL teams, I mean, it is so remarkable that one person was there for essentially the inception, but even before the inception, and then all the way through Korea, Vietnam, through those post-Vietnam years. I mean, it's just incredible. So you do.
I had the honor of swimming his ashes out. So at the Navy SEAL Museum here in Fort Pierce, we swim the ashes out of our frogmen that have passed that year, that the families want that. It's a big tradition. We, usually get about 15, 20 families together on the beach at sunrise. And I was one of the guys that got to swim Rudy out to sea before we let his ashes go. It's probably one of the most meaningful things we do here at the museum, support our families. And if you ever get a chance to see it, Jack, you'd like it.
Yeah, I need to get down there for that. When I went to the museum and met you out there and walked around with you out there, you've done such an amazing job with that place. Your whole team. I mean, that is a world-class museum. Any SEALs who haven't been, highly recommend you go there. Any families that are interested in military history, special operations in general, it is a destination that you have got. And you almost need a couple days. There's so much there, and you've done such an amazing job with it. I was just blown away. Just incredible.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, we're starting a new museum in San Diego.
I know. I was going to ask you a little bit about that, about when is that coming online?
Our goal is October 1st of this year.
Wow.
I almost said next year of 2025. And it's been a work in progress. California is a wonderful place to visit, but it's really hard to work. To get things done there. There's a lot of bureaucracy, as you can imagine, but we've done it. We have a building. It's the construction phase of it will be completed next month, and then we'll start transforming it into the baddest SEAL museum you can imagine.
Nice.
Totally different from Fort Pierce.
Okay.
Right? So Fort Pierce is based on artifacts and cool stuff like that, and you get the touch and feel. The one in California will be more of a virtual kind of thing. You'll be able to put on VR goggles and go through a mission profile and jump and dive and do all sorts of stuff like that. It'll be a lot of touch screens, a lot of interactive things that that we don't have the space for or the funds for, as a matter of here at Fort Pierce.
Oh wow. Okay.
Because California is open,
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to make it out there either for the opening or soon thereafter. And SEAL Team 2. So at the time, focused on Europe, Soviet Union, Cold War. You get there, winter warfare type training. What was cold weather warfare training like back then? And what was it like to train with the Norwegian Jaegers? That's the one thing, or there's two things I wish I'd done in the SEAL teams. One was to do that. But soon after I got there, September 11th happened. So it was really all Iraq, Afghanistan type things. And so I missed that cold weather warfare type stuff. I did some at Team 5, but that was for Korea and that contingency, that plan. But, what was it like to work with those guys? I would have loved to have done that. And I would have loved to have done Israel also, at least just to go there and observe how their Flotilla 13, how they operate or how they train, some of the equipment that they use. I would have loved to have done that as well. Those are the two things I wish I'd done. But what was it like to train with those guys?
So, you work with some certain groups or certain units and you realize, like the 160th, you say, these are the best helicopter pilots in the world. Mm-hmm. You work with the Norwegian Jaegers and you're like, these are the best skiers, outdoor winter warriors there are, right? And you just try to glean as much information from them because that's their environment that they live in, right? Yeah. It seems like they're born with damn skis on their feet. So things that were really hard for me were really easy for them. So we had just doing like some practice missions up north, on the border of Russia and Norway, which is a common thing for them. We would just go out there and spend weeks. It sucked. It was really cold, and you're living in a tent, and you're always cold, right? And it's easy to get complacent out there and just hang out in your sleeping bag because you don't want to get out, you don't want to get cold, you don't want to go to the bathroom. But the Norwegians, they have their techniques and their procedures that just prevent that from happening, right? So you're always doing something in the winter wonderland to make sure that because your biggest enemy is not the enemy at this point, it's the cold. Because you could easily get frostbite, freeze to death, not be able to eat. And then when you do have to fight, you're already, at a deficit. So it was awesome.
Yeah. Oh man.
Something else. I want to go back.
I know. Gosh, I wish I'd done that. Did they have some sort of a team room or team area or something like built in the side of a cliff somewhere? Some guys were telling me about.
They called it. Well, it was a house. They called it the Jaeger House, and it was very close to where their base was. And they usually had about 6 to 8 of those guys that would actually live in this. I guess it would, if I had went to a college frat house, that's what it was like, but on steroids, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I've heard some stories.
The whole team would show up, every night. And there, when we showed up, the one thing that they valued from us was all the booze we would bring.
Nice.
Because it was a lot cheaper. Yeah. So we just, it was flowing like that Jack Daniels there. It was like in Norway, it was like, $200 for a bottle like that.
Oh, wow.
Right? We would get it for like $20 and, they loved it. Anyway, we had a lot of fun.
That's amazing. And what was the training like in the United States before you would go over and do that? When you'd kind of work up to go and train with those guys, what were you doing in the States?
We did, most of our winter training, we actually went over to Goose Bay, Labrador, Canada, and which was pretty close to Virginia Beach. And there was a joint Brit American Air Force base up there, and we would just do our thing up in the mountains of Canada. You know what I mean? Some of the training, they drop us off on the top of a mountain. We had to navigate our way back home. And it would take weeks to make this happen, right? You'd have to get resupplied along the way. But, back in those days, there were no GPSs. It was all map and compass. And I don't even know if a GPS would have helped you. But anyway, it was a hell of an experience. And then by the time you got to Norway, everything's different there. The snow's different, the humidity is different, so you had to learn different techniques. You had to use different wax on your skis, all that kind of different stuff.
Yeah.
Even your weapons were like fired differently just because of the environment. So,
did you guys take M14s out there? What do you carry?
No, we would. It was a mix. Yeah, we didn't. We were East Coasters, so we used mostly M4s.
Okay.
It was lighter, and at that point, when we were in that environment, we were usually in the tree line, you know what I mean? So we weren't taking these long shots.
Okay.
That you would think.
Gotcha.
Different mentality.
Yeah. And what was it like to ski from the Defense Early Warning Site in Greenland to wherever your destination was? What was that experience?
Oh yeah. So what's funny about that is like when President Trump brought up Greenland and his,
I was thinking about this.
I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, "I've been there, and there's not a whole hell of a lot there, right?" So there's a big radar station in the middle of. There's multiple ones on Greenland, and what they do is they monitor for Russian missiles coming across the top of the Arctic into the U.S. So it gives you like literally a 10-minute warning, or it gives the president a 10-minute warning. So they dropped us off with a C-130 with skis on it, right in the middle of Greenland. At one of these places, we unpacked, basically went to the bathroom and started skiing from that point to the coast. And it's totally flat. There's nothing to reference on, right? There's no trees, there's no mountains, there's no nothing. So it kind of plays with your mind, and you just ski for days. It took us 10 days to get off the ice cap. And the only way that you could figure out where you were was a altimeter, because the ice was thickest in the middle of the country, and then as you got to the coast, it went down. So you could kind of figure out what contour line you were on there. Like your compasses were kind of screwed up because it's very close to the magnetic north of in Canada there. So the compasses really weren't that trustworthy. So you had your map and your contour lines and your best guesstimates where you're going. Yeah, and we made it to the edge, and it was just
That's amazing.
Not many people can say they've been to Greenland, right? So I'm one of them. So I'm very lucky.
That's amazing. And you guys are doing some pretty interesting combat swimmer ops back in the day. We got a little bit away from that after September 11th, just solely focused on the mission at hand because we were going to war and there wasn't that much water around. But you did a few different interesting dives all over the world. One in Tunisia, though, that stood out in reading the book.
Yeah, I will tell you that the SEALs are refocusing back on the water again, which is a good thing. I don't know if they'll ever get back to the old days of SEAL Team 2 where we used to, live in the water.
Yeah.
But we would go all over the world and dive, right? Because that's the way to do it. In this particular case, we're in a port in Tunis, Tunisia, and it was nasty. Ports are bad places, right? There's all sorts of
So gross.
nasty stuff in the water, right? So you're not looking forward to getting in the water. And a lot of people go, "Hey, you want to go diving?" And I'm like, "No, I've had enough diving." Because I've never actually seen anything because it's been dark the whole time.
Yeah.
So in this particular case, we were diving a French rebreather, and it was called an oxyger. And I basically overbreathed it. What that means is that you kind of hyperventilate and you can kill yourself doing it. But I was diving with a Vietnam vet. His name was Butch White, and I didn't want to look like I was, weak or a whiner, and I should have just stopped him, and we could have went to the surface. I could have caught my breath, and everything would have been fine. But that eventually happened, but it got too close to me blacking out, and I basically gave him the squeeze. We went to the surface. He started yelling at me for something, and I was like, I didn't care at that point because I wasn't dead, and we just continued on with the dive once I caught my breath.
Oh man. Second chances. I wanted to ask you about. Well, before I do that, did you have the Klepper sea kayaks at Team 2?
We use those extensively. I did a couple of deployments to, we would travel from Machrihanish, Scotland to, all over Europe. And that was the Brit specialty. The SBSs were the Klepper canoes. And those are like little death traps, those things.
Are they?
Yeah, because it's you're carrying all your own stuff, right? Your own equipment, let's say 80 pounds. And then you got to carry this damn boat around with you too. So you split it up with two guys, and all of a sudden you have 140 pounds of stuff. And then, if you flip over in that thing, it's just miserable. You're cold, and you just, the only way to get out of it is you got to paddle until your clothes dry out.
Oh man. So when I got to Team 2, there was still like one in a Connex box.
Yeah.
And I thought many a day about liberating that from its jail and refurbishing it. I'm sure it was all eaten up by mice and rats and all that stuff. 'Cause it's a canvas thing, right? So it's like a wood frame you put together, and then you put this canvas frame around it and all that. So at some point I want to track one down. I want to track one of the ones that you were issued it to from back in the day. And you probably have one in the museum there. Do you have one in the museum? I forget.
No, that's one thing we don't have in here. It's a good point. I should get one.
Yeah. Because I saw all the pictures in all the different magazines and everything growing up, in Soldier of Fortune and Gung Ho magazine and a few books, and they had some really cool pictures of that Klepper sea kayak. And I love sea kayaking. I love kayaking, river kayaking. I love it all. And I always wanted to get one of those from when I was a little kid. So I should have liberated it back. No one would have noticed. It probably ended up in a dumpster.
You should have. Yeah, you should have.
Because someone from supply was probably told to clean that Connex box out at some point, and they probably went in and saw this moth-ridden just heap of stuff, and they probably tossed it. That's what I'm guessing happened.
Yeah, that's what happens to most stuff, believe it or not.
I know, it's so painful. I should have liberated that. Dang it. Second chances. Second chances are important, and you learned a lesson earlier on in your time in the SEAL teams. You're still at SEAL Team 2. You're in Scotland. You do some sort of a motorcycle sticker forgery thing and end up in jail. What is that story, and the lesson that you learned from it?
Well, we called it a turnover car. So basically, every platoon that rolled in there for their 6 to 8 month deployment the only way to get it off base was a car, right? So they would, basically turn the car over. Each platoon would pay a little bit less. But by the time we got there, this car was in no shape to hit the roads, right? Because it wouldn't pass the inspection. So, and it cost too much money and nobody was willing to pay for it, right? So I stole the sticker off of my XO, which is executive officer's motorcycle, because it was easy to get off, right? It was just a little like placard on there, because everybody else has had a sticker on their car, and there's no way to take it off a windshield. So anyway, I took it off, made a photocopy of it, put it back on his motorcycle, colored it in perfectly, and for the next 5 months, that thing worked like a champ. I mean, never got busted, never even got looked at. Then right before we were getting ready to go home, literally 2 weeks, one of the guys says, "Hey, I want to take the car and go to church." And I was like, "You want to go to church?" I was like, "Okay." So he went to church. On his way out of church, he comes out and there's two bobbies standing by the car waiting for him. Right. And he immediately drops a dime on me. Like, this isn't my car. This is Rick's car, blah, blah, blah. And the next thing you know, I'm at the walk into the station to figure out what's going on, turn myself in, for lack of a better term. And there's two big bobbies, but grab me on each side like I'm going to run away and they threw me into jail. And it was like a dank, dark cell like you see in the movies. Really, it was a little window. There was a mattress on the floor. It was like running water. They threw me a little novel, book to read, and I was like, well,
Wow.
I had no idea what was going on. Right, so basically, 4 or 5 hours later, they come and get me. They escort me to the courthouse, and the judge is, it's like, "Did you do this?" And I'm like, "Yes." "Did you?" And I wasn't going to hide anything. And he goes, "How much money do you have?" There's a mistake I made. He says, "How much money do you have?" I said, "Well, I have like 200 pounds on me." And he goes, he hits the gavel, 200 pounds. And I was like, damn, if I had just been a little bit quicker, I could have been like 20 pounds.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was just happy to get out of there. But so that was the civilian side of the punishment. I had to still come to the military side of the punishment when I got back to the base. And the XO that I stole the sticker from, he wanted blood, right? And luckily, the CO at the time, his name was Larry Bailey. He, for some reason, liked me and got me out of trouble and let me go home unscathed. So it was like it was a good day.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in those second chances. Because they, other than giving that person a second chance, it also teaches them something. So I love that you included that in the book. When did you go to sniper school? Did you go there at some point during this time frame?
I went in the 80s, early, probably 83-ish.
Okay.
84.
Where was
When
it
I
at the
went
time?
through, it was taught by a guy named Color Sergeant Mote. He was actually a SAS guy that, or actually not SAS, a Royal Marine that was a sniper in Northern Ireland.
Oh, wow.
He was like, it was an excellent time to learn about sniping. And I was basically the second class from SEAL Team 2 that I actually ever went through sniper school. So
Wow.
it was quite the experience.
Where was that?
It was in Fort AP Hill
Okay.
in Virginia.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. And they were just learning how to do, how they're going to grade the stocks and this and that and the other thing.
Yeah.
So we got some full benefit on some of this stuff. And then they would just figure out, oh, this was too hard. We'll do it over again tomorrow. We're like, because everybody got caught, you know what I mean? It's like there was nowhere to hide. So they it was a learning process for both sides, the instructors and the guys.
Yeah. What what weapons platforms did you have back then? Because I think when we started with the M14s that were the Accurized type ones. Then we moved on to I think it was a 7.62, so a 308 from the Remington Custom Shop, Remington 700, then 300 Win Mag, Remington 700 Action, Macmillan stocks, then the 50s. I think that's how it went, if memory serves. And I went in 2000. But what were you guys using back when you went through?
What is it? M700? Does that sound right? I can't even remember.
Was it one, or did you have to progress through a few different rifles?
No, it was just one rifle. Everybody had the same one. They had like a Redfield scope.
Yeah.
Back in the day, no medical worth a damn. It was just, that was the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. So it was, no M14s. Like I said, the East Coast and the West Coast had a parting of ways when it came to the M14. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
well, you have some experience with later on with one I'm going to get to in a moment, but that's interesting. What a cool time to go through at the beginning of a sniper school. That's at the outset. That's so cool.
It was something else,
man. And then, how much did you know about SEAL Team 6 before you got to Team 2, or while you were at Team 2? I'm sure you're learning more, and then you go through selection, and you're being put through, I'm guessing, by those plank owners of that team.
Yeah, a lot of the same Vietnam vets that switched over from SEAL Team 2 were at SEAL Team 6, and then they're running the training. So you got to remember back in those days, SEAL Team 6 compound was right behind SEAL Team 2's compound. So we had access to those guys on a daily basis, right?
Gotcha.
And, they never wore a uniform, no haircuts. So it was intriguing for a young SEAL at SEAL Team 2 to go, hey, I want to be one of those cool guys, right? And eventually I had my shot at it, so it's still to this day it's about the same. They make you do a couple deployments and have to have so many years under your belt. You have to ask for permission, and then that permission goes through your chain of command, and then they send your name over to the team, and then the team still votes whether you're coming or not.
Wow.
So just because on paper you look like a good SEAL doesn't mean that your teammates think you're a good SEAL. So this pure guidance, but judgment started a long time ago at the SEAL teams. Now it's like the newest fad at BUD/S. You know what I mean?
Okay.
They do these pure assessments.
Yeah.
On you. So
Interesting.
anyway, so it was an easy because I knew a lot of the guys, so it was easy. And when I put my name in there, they interviewed you, and I'd never been interviewed for a job in my life, right? So I joined the Navy. I didn't get interviewed. Went to, I guess BUD/S is an interview, but
a long one. Yeah.
And so I went in there, and they had the CO, the XO, the command master chief, and the command shrink in the office. And I was, it's intimidating, right? I mean, I didn't know what they were going to ask me, and this and that and the other thing, and they didn't really, basically I was in at that point, so I don't know what I could have done to get excluded, but I just didn't talk a lot and just kept my mouth shut and worked through the interview, and the rest is history.
Oh man. Yeah. I think one of the guys who was early on in there was my master chief at BUD/S when I got there in '97, Denny Chalker. Of course everyone's looking at him with all that time at that command.
Yeah. No, Denny was one of my team chiefs. So, in red. So
wow. Amazing.
Yeah. It is amazing.
What are your memories from going through that selection?
I guess the biggest thing is that as actually I was the green team chief or the training chief also in my tenure there. So what they do is they're not trying to teach you to be a SEAL, right? Because you've already went through BUD/S. They're not trying to make you quit at this point because you've already done multiple deployments. You're already a SEAL. That they're trying to teach you the SEAL Team 6 way.
Yeah.
Right. And that's and their specialty obviously is CQB, hostage rescue, those types of high risk missions, and you got to have a different kind of a mindset to be able to do that. And it was just over and over. And believe it or not, we used 686s, Smith & Wesson 686s. Believe it or not, I couldn't.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
And I know. Trust me, I was like, I couldn't.
Stainless.
Yes, because they never jammed apparently, but reloading those things was
Yeah.
It took a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
We switched over to Berettas after that, and then Berettas to SIGs, and and now they just basically change over whenever they feel like it, depending on the weapon,
Yeah, I ended up grabbing a 686 not too long ago because we still had them at SEAL Team 5 when I got there in '97, and we still trained up on them. And I love a good wheel gun, a good revolver, and it is a good one. It's fun. They're fun to shoot. Fun.
Yep. And it's a whole different thing when you're trying to do CQB and reload one of those things, because it's like, 6 shots.
Yeah.
It's like reload or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a course with, I didn't use a 686. I didn't have it yet. I used a Smith & Wesson Thunder Ranch. So it's actually 45 ACP revolver, and did a course. Everybody else on the line had auto loading, mostly striker fire pistols. And then I used that wheel gun, that revolver, and loved it. And it made me, I was sharp. I was on it. Those shots were in there. It was so much fun to do a course like that. It was cool. Good problem solving, good doing reloads because, they wouldn't have to with the auto loaders. And it was just, anyway, I'm a fan of revolvers. I need to get on them a little more though. What year did you get to development group?
85.
85. So you're there for 8 years before you end up in Somalia.
Correct. So I was in a sniper team. So back in those days, every one of the assault groups had their own sniper team. So I was part of the red team's snipers, and we were going. When you're there, you are on recall, right? So on standby most of the time, right? Which is 4 hours. So you had an hour to get to work. You had 3 hours to pack your stuff, get briefed, and get on a plane, and you're basically out. The plane's taking off in 4 hours. So I lived most of my life like that. So when Somalia was happening, it was a process. It happened for quite a while.
Yeah.
Right. It just didn't happen one day that everybody was starving and the warlords were taking over. It took months and months for that. And then when the warlords basically attacked the Pakistanis that were moving food shipments, that was like the straw that broke the camel's back that sent the U.S. in. And we just happened to be the team on standby during that process. Even though we'd been practicing and getting ready for it, we would go off standby, and then the next team would take it. And it basically came back to us, and we got the call. And that's how we ended up over there. And the only reason we ended up over there is because our general in charge, his name was General Garrison, decided he wanted to try to get a better relationship between the SEALs and the Army. Because we were always butting heads, right? It's always a competition. Well, they set us up for failure, at the beginning, right? So if you wanted a mission, you had both teams or both groups would go and brief the mission to the general.
The Army general.
Yeah, the Army general. And it was 9 times out of 10, or 9.9 times out of 10, they would pick the Army plan because, they're used to what the Army is going to brief, right? And in this particular case for Somalia, our CO briefed a float forward staging base, basically saying that, the Navy would park an aircraft carrier off the coast of Somalia, and we would launch and do all our missions off the ship, and not have to even deal with the airport or any of that other stuff. Anyway, they picked the Army plan, and we all ended up at the airport in Mogadishu.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean that's a little known fact there,
Yeah.
and in retrospect, it was would have been the best plan because they wouldn't have known when we were coming or anything, right?
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah.
And so when do you get there? Because remember the SEALs from, was it SEAL Team 3 maybe? Anyway, maybe it was 8. Anyway, I don't know. Came over the beach, and then CNN is waiting on the beach in Somalia. Remember
Got there
that?
in August of 93.
Okay. So that had already happened. The CNN crew had already got those SEALs coming over.
Yeah, that was a process. Like I said, Somalia was going on for a while. Right?
Yeah.
They had different SEALs and different special forces groups in there doing different missions, and but when they decided to fight with the Pakistanis, that's when they drew the line.
Okay. So you guys end up there, and you have a different mission right off the bat than what it morphed into. You're at a CIA safe house in the city.
Right, which was I know you're write books about the CIA and stuff like that. And the SEALs, but it's a love-hate relationship between this active duty SEALs and then the actual CIA guys. It's just a different kind of a mindset that we do things differently and than they do, right? So it's like this constant conflict. So we get called into the general's trailer, and he says, "Hey, I got a job for you guys. Why don't you go out and help out this safe house here and make sure they're safe and protect them doing what they're doing." And that's exactly what we did. We left the same day we flew in, we basically left our security of the 300 Army guys and the 4 Navy SEALs, and we went to the CIA base, which was on the other side of the airport. And basically we're like, okay, what's going on? And then they gave us a quick brief and said, yeah, tomorrow morning we're all going to take these vehicles with all your stuff, and we're going to the safe house, and we're going to set up security for it. And we're like, okay, we can do it. So that's what we did. We just got in the vehicle. We drove through, the heart of Mogadishu, which at the time, wasn't as hot as it got later. But we just basically set up in this house. It was a beautiful house for Somalia, and 3 stories, and we set up on the roof with our sniper, observation equipment and rifles, and just made sure that nobody could get a high ground around us to be able to launch RPGs at us, at least from up high, right? If they're going to shoot them from the ground, there's nothing we can do about that.
And here
At
you are.
time, I did have an M14.
Exactly. That was was going to be my point right there.
Yeah,
is that there's your uniform.
Stupid move. Well, it was a choice between that and a bolt gun, right? And a bolt gun is not a good anything in the urban, right? So I still needed to make some long shots, but not with a bolt gun, right? Which ended up being the worst rifle in the world, trying to get in and out of vehicles and do stuff like that. It was just too big.
Yeah.
So when my buddy Howie got shot, I took his gun, said thank you very much, left my M14 back at the base, and kept going.
Oh, interesting. So when I got to Team 5, and I don't know if his name's out there publicly, so I'll just say his first name's John, last name starts with a G. And he was either at Team 5 or he was going around. Anyway, he's one of the lessons learned. I just found my little green notebook that has over the weekend when I was cleaning out a storage little thing. So I found all my green notebooks. And in there is one that has my notes from his brief. And he was with you. And he talked about so I'm brand new, 1997, getting this brief at SEAL Team 5. And he talks about how he wished he had an M4 with as many magazines as he could possibly have had. I have that written down. Yeah,
that's a fact. Because he had an M14 also, but like I said, so when we lost one of our teammates, he was just shot. I grabbed it before anybody could say anything, and then I told Howie, he was laying on a cot basically in the medic tent. I said, "Hey, I'm taking your gun," and I took he had a ballistic helmet at the time, so I took that too, and we went back out again. But wow. John was still stuck with his M14.
Wow. Well, before that, so you're at the CIA safe house for how long? For weeks? Or
it was a couple weeks. Couple weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're doing all sorts of CIA stuff. They're literally suitcases full of money. We're dropping them off to different areas. Totally risky stuff that we didn't like at all. Right. So you go with the guy that's in charge of the house, and you had one SEAL, and then the other SEALs stayed back. And if something had happened, you're a goner basically. Just the CIA guy, I didn't even know if he had a gun. And then you had one guy. Anyway, it was crazy stuff, and stuff you see in the movies, but it was real. And eventually, a couple of the informants that were working for the agency guy got shot and killed, and they determined it was too hot to stay there. We extracted in the middle of the night from a soccer field next door. And again, just like the movies, but a lot slower than in the movies, because it took them like 30 minutes to unload all the equipment. Because there was you can imagine all the radios and all the intercept equipment they had at that house, and they couldn't leave any of it. But it left us out there in the middle of the soccer field for 30 minutes at least, as we're loading this helicopter. And we're just like, hopefully nobody hears us or wants to come and get us, because we were wide open.
Wow. Well, soccer fields
typically, I was going to say, typically the guys were the bad guys were high on cot. So time and either passed out or sleeping or whatever.
Interesting. The soccer field, when I read about that in Frogman Stories, I thought about what the plan was had Eagle Claw succeeded, or had they moved past Desert One and got to their RON site and then moved in to Tehran to get our hostages in 1980, and how they would have gotten out of there, which I believe was fairly close to one of the places where most of the hostages were being held, was an extract via helicopter from a soccer stadium.
Yeah. I mean, they know it's open.
Football for the international audience.
Yeah, I know. Is soccer a sport? I'm just kidding.
I think I'd like soccer a lot more if every time they got bumped, they wouldn't try to draw the ref's attention with the acting part of it. I think that's.
I think they should make the goal bigger too. Higher scoring. It's
1-0. Exactly. So you do that for a couple weeks, then you get back to the airfield. And what are your days like there, and then how do you end up on helicopters doing the Eyes Over Somalia? Is that what it was called?
Yeah. So there was the Army guys weren't very happy to see us back because they really didn't, they didn't want us, right? So and I understand that. If we had a team of SEALs there and 4 Army guys, I wouldn't want them either. So anyway, but that gave us a leeway, and that's why the story kind of comes full circle. This is exactly what the guys in Vietnam did, right? They went out and found their work. And that's exactly what we did. We started searching for work, and we come across the Army pilot that happened to be a former SEAL and was flying this mission, Eyes Over Mogadishu, and they had these Army Pathfinders on board using 50 caliber Barretts as their weapons to shoot out of the helicopters, right out of the Blackhawks. And we're like, hey, we offer this, and we have the weapons, lasers, we practice, we do this. This is what we do. And their CO, God bless him, said okay. And the next thing you know, we're flying Eyes Over Mogadishu every night. Basically, our rules of engagement were that if somebody started shooting at you, obviously you could shoot back. But it was mostly like if they had weapons in the city, they were bad guys, so we could open up on them. I mean, it was really tough because the helicopters were flying pretty fast, but it was still it was a good mission.
Wow.
But we would come. I mean, that lasted for a couple of weeks, and but we like really ruined the morale of the Army guys because every night we were coming in and out. We come back, high five, and yeah, you remember this? Talking shit stories, and they just sat there, because they were just waiting for the big miss, right? They were waiting for the big, high value target.
Yeah.
And their commander walks up to us and says, "Hey, you guys you're now done with that mission.
Wow.
We found you a different job." And we're like, so they basically stuck us in a damn Humvee and said, "Yeah, you're going to go with the Rangers." And we're like, "Okay, it is what it is." We just moved on to the next thing.
Wow. And how long do you do that mission? So now you're out of the helicopters, you're in the Humvees. Were there a few different missions that you did that for before October 3rd?
Yeah, we were in there for a couple of weeks again.
Okay.
And basically at that point there was a couple extra Army guys rolled into town. So we had like 8 of us between the 4 SEALs and 4 Army guys, and we kind of split between 2 Humvees. And our job was to do collateral, right? So the guys would fast rope in on a building and they would squeeze everybody down. So they'd be running out, so we would either, capture or kill them as they were leaving the building. Or there would be like little sheds around the building that we would go search as the main assault force was taking down the building. So that was our job. It was pretty cool, right? So you had the Rangers would form a perimeter around the target, and we would just basically drive right into the target. And that's how it went for a while. And until the big day.
Yeah.
Everything went wrong.
How many SEALs are you with when you're doing those missions?
I was actually with 3 Army guys when I went in because we split up because we had different radios and stuff like that. And one of the things I tell people when they come to the Navy SEAL Museum is that 9/11 changed a lot of that, because before 9/11 we didn't have the same radios, call signs, call for fire, all that stuff was all service dependent, right? Yeah. And then that all changed after 9/11. And that's one of the things that hurt us at Black Hawk Down, is we didn't have the same radios, or we as snipers carried our night vision and everything with us at all times.
Yep.
Army guys didn't. It was just it wasn't their SOP because they didn't think they were going to be out there all night. So we were some of the few people that did have night vision. So it actually worked out for us.
Yeah. And those lessons, they're still the same ones I was using in Iraq all those years later. Hey, even if we're going out for a daylight meeting with somebody in Ramadi or wherever else, and it's just supposed to be a half hour out, bringing night vision. We are bringing night vision, and and you have your suppressor.
Bring some water, a lot of extra ammo.
Yeah, exactly. But it's lessons from you guys that I got as a new guy. Tell me about your memories of October 3rd. How did that day start?
So it was like any other day there. We were, like I said, we were always lived on recall at home, but the recall there was like literally 5 minutes, right? You
Mhm.
were like close enough to everything that you just grabbed your gear, put your gear on, and you either run out to a helicopter. In our case, we ran to the Humvee. The helicopters would all launch at the same time, and then you get the call, the 5 minute, call, and then literally at the 5 minute call, the ground Humvees were out of the gate because we didn't want to alert the bad guys that we were coming out because the helicopters would usually take off, they'd fly out to sea for a while, and then they would come back in. So
Mhm.
the bad guys didn't quite know when they were coming in or
Mhm.
where they were coming or where they were going, but they knew it from the ground convoy because there's only a couple roads in and out of the airport, right? Anyway, so that was how we tried to divert them. So we were heading towards the target, and the army guys were, doing their thing, fast roping in, and we were taking up position to do our job, and then it just had, one of the Blackhawks got shot down right at pretty much at the beginning. Um, and while that was all going on, there was a one of the Army Rangers had actually fallen out of the helicopter. He missed a rope, and you can imagine, how it is, and when you're in the helicopter, and if it does a shake or you're in a brownout, it's easy. You could miss the rope, and he did, and he fell down, and he was uh, pretty pretty banged up. He was going to die, so they decided to send him back to base. Ended up putting him in the Humvee I was in because it was a cargo Humvee, so they could put the stretcher back there. And anyway, I ended up getting in the back with the guy, um, and we had a medic that was taking care of him. But we started driving back as a three Humvee convoy, and from the time we took off to the target to the time we took back, ended up back was like 10 minutes, probably
Mhm.
maybe 15 minutes. But everything had changed in the city. I mean, that streets were on fire. There was vehicles blocking the routes. There was tires burning. There was people shooting at you at every corner. Um, and we just realized that, this is a shithole, and we got to get back to the base. And we just basically, luckily, our lead drivers had a pretty good handle on how to get back because a lot of the routes we were going to take were blocked. So it was a constant movement because stopping was death, basically. If you stopped, especially like in alleyway or anywhere somebody could get a line on you, you were going to get shot. So we just kept moving, and eventually we made it back to the base and dropped off. At that point, it was for the one guy that we were taking back. We ended up losing a couple more, so that was a heavy trip just getting back to the base. We had to change out all those Humvees because they're all shot up, and got some new ones, but basically reloaded and went back out and tried to link up with the main force that was still out there.
God, as you're getting shot up as you're moving through these streets, there's no turret. Are there turrets in some of these, or what does that convoy look like?
Some of them had turrets. The Rangers had the turrets. We had the stupid cargo Humvee with some sandbags in the back. Better than nothing, but so we were just using our M14s, and yeah, man, it would have been so much better with an M4. But anyway, it is what it is.
So you're fighting your way through the street. So you're returning fire.
Yeah, basically, we are fighting our way in and out of the city, right? Because the people were spread out, obviously, all over, and I think it was just the day they decided to fight. And literally, we would just leave the base, and we would start getting shot at immediately. And it was just like, wow, this is for real, at this point. So it was just a running gun battle in and out.
And what was your mission then? You come back, you know that what do you know about what's happening in the city with the Rangers and with Delta when you get back to base?
Well, we know, or I know at that point, that we have to get back to the main convoy. They're taking heavies in the city. There was a Blackhawk that had been shot down, and they still had a truckload of hostages, or not, or captives, right? So um, we had to just, our goal at that point was just to get to them to try to assist, the effort. So as we are trying to get out to them, they're trying to get the hell out of there. And unfortunately, it was, they were dealing with the same thing we dealt with on the way out when we were trying to get back to the base, but we were only 3 Humvees. They had, 6 bys, bunch of Humvees. I mean, it was like a 15, 20 vehicle convoy, right? So it's much harder to deal with that than it is for 3, because we could maneuver fast, make quick decisions. And so they had a lot harder time, and they took heavies every turn they made. Vehicle 3 would get hit, vehicle 7 would get hit, and they were just trying to make it out of there. And they were also trying to find the crash site. So when the helicopters crash, they don't look like helicopters anymore. They look like, like all the rest of the crap in the streets in Somalia. And they never really were able to find it. And this was one of those things where we've lesson learned later is that they had a relay problem. So they had a helicopter. This is the early days of ISR, right? So they had with a camera, and it was basically watching the convoy, and it would relay, take a left here. It would go back to base. Base would relay it to the ground vehicle commander, and then by that time he was the next block down.
Yeah.
So it was one of those lessons learned, and they never really quite linked up with the helicopter. At a certain point, though, they said, "Hey, we can't sustain any more losses to the convoy," and they said, "Return to base. We're going to have to come back and get the guys that we left out in the city from the helicopter crash."
Wow.
So as they're making it back to the base and we're making it out to them, we ended up linking up, and basically they gave us the word we're heading back to the base, and we all linked up, and all of us went back to the base again. Again, we regrouped, got new vehicles again because they were all shot up, and waited for this time. We were going to wait till dusk to head out there to give us a little bit more advantage with our night vision and stuff. And that's exactly what we did. So there's probably a handful of guys, me and a couple of the Army guys that went out three or 4 times that day. There's just a couple of us. I don't know how lucky or unlucky that was, but when I think about it now, it's just like you don't think about it. You just go in, reload, get some more water, go to the bathroom, whatever, and then you're out. It just happens.
Wow.
And that's exactly what happened. Jeez. Third time was a charm. Obviously, we went out with 4 M60, old M60 tanks from World War II that the Pakistanis had. You had I think 11 or 12 Malaysian APCs, and then you had another 20 Humvees, and I was in another damn Humvee. And now that, talk about a convoy, that's a long convoy, right? And nobody in the Humvees were really happy about it because their tanks don't move that fast in the middle of the city, right? And you're just like, man, every chance you get, every time they stopped, if you were like I said, at a cross street, you're inviting people to shoot down this alley at you, right? So everybody's like maneuvering for spots to get out of the alleyway. So it's kind of funny.
Gosh, when you stop, would you get out of the Humvee? Were you in the front? Were you in the back? Were you in?
No, we were in the rear of it because the tanks led us. Then it was the APCs, and then it was the Humvees.
Okay.
So sometimes we got out, sometimes we didn't. So it just depended, because a number of times they had to figure out where they were.
Yeah.
Right. Compared to where the crash site is.
Because no GPS is for those listening. Watching.
Yeah, exactly. No, not at all. And then trying to make sure that our guys didn't shoot at us because we were, getting in there because they were, surrounded basically by bad guys. So, us coming in there was definitely, there's a chance for that. Wow. So every time we stopped, it was just crazy. Eventually the tank commander said, we're not going any further. It's too dangerous. They're afraid of RPGs. And I never, to this day, I don't understand that one. But then the APC said they would go forward if we got out of our vehicles and escorted them in. Huh. So basically, like old World War II, troop movement with vehicles. It's never thought nothing we trained for either. You're just basically doing your urban thing and trying to move, quickly and not be, in one place too long.
Yeah.
And they just drove alongside, right? So it was, but we ended up losing a couple of those APCs to RPG fire. So I mean, the tank. I guess the tank guys had right to be concerned because we ended up losing some of them.
Wow. Well, did the tanks fire close by, or was it the APCs, or what did they launch?
Yeah, no, it was all of them. So
Yeah.
like I said, I swear when we were maneuvering, like I said, to get out of a crosswalk, one of the tanks, I remember this like it was yesterday. I see the turret of the tank start to move, right? And I'm like I was thinking to myself, he cannot fire because we were like right there. Or it was right next to him, right? I mean, I could have looked him in the eyeballs, and sure enough, it goes off, and you're blinded and you can't hear.
Mhm.
And I wanted to kill that guy. I really did. And anyway, we just kept moving, and the tanks stayed where they were. And
Did you ever have to hard point in a building, or are you trying to get to the other convoy at this point, or trying to get to the crash site, or trying to?
we're trying to get to the crash sites.
Okay.
At that
Yeah,
point.
sites.
So the second one had went down. So the plan, obviously with that large of a convoy, we split up in half, and one went to one site, one went to the other site to see what they could find. And that's exactly what we did. Took us all night, but we made it in there. And luckily, because it was dark, it was a lot less accurate fire coming at us. How's that?
Okay.
There's a lot of shooting, but not a lot of, the bad guys didn't have any night vision. And we took care of business pretty good on the way in.
And so you have your nods, and these M14s, do they have scope on them, or do they have lasers on them? What do you have on these
Both.
things at the point? Okay.
Scopes and lasers. Yep.
Okay.
So at night you weren't. Yeah, the scope was useless. So it just had a laser on there. But like I said, at that point I had M4 at that point, so I was lucky.
Okay. So you had an M4 with a laser and your nods at that
Scope
point.
and a laser. Yep.
When do you switch out for the M4?
Well, like I said, one of our guys got shot up, and
You took that guy. Okay.
Yeah, when we took him back to the hospital.
Okay.
His gun was just laying there. I'm like, hey, Howie, can I take your gun? And he's like, yeah.
Okay. So early on, the first
Yeah.
iteration there. Okay. Jeez. What else other than having an M4 and a lot of ammo? What other lessons did you bring back from that day?
Wow. I think the one of the bigger lessons was that it would have been nice to have been trained with the other units a lot more than we did. Especially the Rangers, they have a different way of doing business than SEALs do, and when you're working with a large group of them, they're very rigid in their responses to how when things go bad. The Army Special Forces guys we were with, they're pretty much interchangeable with our guys, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're really highly trained, motivated, and that's the difference when you got a ranger that just made it through ranger school. He's 20 years old, and you got I was a chief at the time that's 36 years old. There's a big difference, and that's one of the things I think. I don't know how you can fix something like that, but the whole idea of sharing responsibility and making us work together better was probably not the best in that particular circumstance. That and then just things you take for granted, like having water, was critical because it was hot as hell, and you can only go so far before you have to have something to drink. Keeping your weapons and functional in the dust and the dirt and all that stuff.
Yeah. How does that night end for you?
The night ends for me. The sun started coming up, and everybody was starting to get nervous, right? Because we knew what was coming, and even more so. So luckily, we had hit both crash sites at that point. That the dead guys had been extracted from the helicopters, and we had recovered all the guys that were stuck in the city, and they were all loaded up into the APCs, all the wounded, and then the guys that could still walk would jump in. Like we had a whole bunch jump into my Humvee again because it had open bed in the back. So at that point, once we got the word to go, we were like, let's get the hell out of here. And then they said, hey, no, we're not going back to the base because we're not going to make it back to the base. So we went to a different soccer stadium to get out of there. Unfortunately, when that call was made to get out, there were still guys on the ground from the 10th Mountain Division. They were still walking or doing like their patrol or security. And they saw the vehicles taking off, and that's where the whole Mogadishu Mile comes from. And they literally ran a mile from our location to the soccer stadium.
Wow. Jeez.
But luckily, none of those guys got hurt. But I can imagine them literally running
All that gear.
like, yep.
Yeah. What happens at the soccer stadium then?
Oh, that was so we get in the soccer stadium. It was mass devastation. You know what I mean? We of the original 100 guys that went in on the op, I think we lost like 80, or casualties were about 80 something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So either killed or wounded. So the whole middle of the field was nothing but medical. One end of it was for helicopters, for medical helicopters flying people out of there. So we just basically, thank God for the Pakistanis in that case, we just sat in the stand and kind of just soaked it all in. And I remember this guy came by with a little thing of soup and he says, here you go. And I was like, very grateful for it as we were just watched all this carnage in front of us. And we just waited for our turn to get a helicopter out of there. And we flew back to the base and they had us get ready again. We got suited up because we didn't know what was going on, but Michael Durant was captured and one of the helicopters crashed. They took him out of there and he was still alive, but we were getting ready to go rescue him. But unfortunately, we never knew where he was. That once they got him away from the helicopter, we lost him.
Wow.
So we basically were on standby for that for a few more hours and then stood down and waited, tried to collect intelligence and, waiting for that next chance to go get him.
And those wounded, were they treated initially at the airfield and then were they taken to ships offshore?
Yeah, they were treated initially at the soccer stadium, right? And then they were flown back to the airfield. They had a full-blown hospital there. And then, the guys that needed to went to Germany.
Okay. So they flew out from there to Germany, not to a ship off.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that's amazing. How many times have you been on an Air Force plane that broke down in,
Right.
Hawaii and other places? They never, ever broke down in Mogadishu.
Yeah. There's certain places they don't break down. Yeah.
C5s, C1, C17, C141, all never broke down. It was amazing. It was a miracle.
Yep. Yep. I get it. And how long are you there before you head back home?
I ended up being there. John, that he flew back. Howie was shot, and then they sent a couple of replacements. So I stayed a couple more weeks to train the new guys that were coming in because we didn't realize that they were going to pull us out. So I ended up being there for like 2.5, 3 months altogether.
Man. And what was it like being back after this incident happens? The gravity of it must start sinking in. Is there a lot of uncertainty about what you guys are going to, if you're going to stay, if you're going to go? Where's Michael Durant? Are we going to hit him, get him out of there? What was it like to be there in the aftermath of this event?
Nothing changed. We were still on the hook for, high value targets, and the highest of which being one of our own people. So we just basically stayed on that hook, right? They were a little bit more gun shy to do anything out in the city at that point. But anyway, like I said, for on a day-to-day basis, nothing really changed for us.
Yeah. And not many people know this, but there was a casualty not long after, I forget how many days after, a mortar hits the compound.
It was right next to where I was sleeping too. It was, the SEALs were in a group and we were just sitting on our cots. And then I swear it's like 50 yards away from us within the compound, boom, the lights go off. And we realized, all the leadership from the Army was taken out with one shot. It was like the luckiest shot for the bad guys in the world. And it took all their leadership out. And it was just bad news,
Yeah, there's
So
not
they
much.
were doing that kind of stuff all the time. It wasn't it. And when I say lucky, it really was because they were mortaring us from the time I got there until the time we left.
Yeah.
This one just happened to land right in the middle of four guys that were in a circle talking to each other. And anyway, it's a fluke.
Yeah, you get, I mean, same thing in Iraq and Afghanistan, as you know. Those things come in and sometimes they just go off, or sometime later we got the early warning type deal. You know, some sort of anyway, you're supposed to run to a bunker or something like that. And I think there's one time, I think in Iraq, maybe closer to the end, where someone ran where they were exactly where they're supposed to that bunker. And then it was a direct hit on the bunker or something along those lines. But yeah, it's just so random. Man, I was thinking about you guys in Najaf in 2004, running through those streets. It's like 11 days we were out there doing that, and it was daylight ops. We had the Abrams right there, the tank, Bradley fighting vehicles, the whole thing. And it was 11 days of, I think it was a 2-week campaign, but we were there with our sniper team for 11 days of it. But I was thinking about you guys and those lessons from you guys all those years earlier, a decade earlier.
Yeah, at least you had Bradley, so that must have been a good feeling.
I love the Bradley.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the Bradley. Being in the back of it and calling in support from them, like they're just awesome when that thing shows up. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, if we would have had a gunship, it would have changed everything. But unfortunately, politics stepped in on that one. And
yeah. Did you know that was a possibility, or is that something you learned later on, or was that something guys talked about?
No, I learned it later on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
We were just focused on doing our job, right? So.
Yep. We did have the AC-130 gunship in Najaf and got to call some fire in from that. So very helpful. Man. And then you get back to the team, and are you passing on these lessons? Like, what is that like when you get back, having been a part of something so momentous?
It was very awkward because you had a whole team of 200 SEALs that were pissed that they didn't get to go, and why did you go, and why didn't we go, and why weren't we part of this? And it was very awkward at the beginning, and then everybody kind of got over that whole thing, and then we tried to give debriefs and share some of the things we learned because they were still going over there at that point. It wasn't for combat operations anymore, but so there was constantly people going over there. And today we're still there. There's SEALs still in Mogadishu, which blows my mind. And we've lost SEALs in recent history in that shithole, and it's just for what I don't know.
Yeah, man. Yeah, interesting. Coming back, you mentioned that. I hadn't thought about this in years, but coming back from the Najaf, those 11 days, I mean, it was like World War II is what I was thinking when I was out there. I was thinking that same thing you were, that this is like the World War II movies that I watched as a kid with my dad, of guys running through rubble everywhere and taking up these different positions and running through the streets. And we actually talked about, hey, when we get back from this, as we're getting ready to go back, just this small sniper team, we're going back to something where the guys are doing the interim Iraqi government protection detail. Yeah. Meanwhile, we've been doing this for that was pretty intense, and so we're like, hey, temper how we talk about it, like just ease back in to it, because everybody would want to be in that situation. Every SEAL would want to be in that situation. And it was just, so very similar. Interesting that you mentioned that. I hadn't thought about that in the longest time. Then you find yourself in Bosnia.
Yeah. So, being in the sniper team at that time, I was a
few years later
team chief. I was a sniper team chief at that point. So, so I was in charge of all three of the sniper teams, right? As far as the sniper training and all that kind of thing. So that persons indicted for war crime, PIFWICs, we call them. We were searching for those bastards, and they had done some really bad things. I mean, you're talking about genocide and some of the atrocities that were going on. I mean, these people deserve to get caught, right? It was probably one of the few places in the world that we could go in as big white guys and fit in, because the Bosnians are, pretty big people, right? And they mostly have black hair, but we fit in there all right as long as we didn't open our mouths. And so we ran around that country for months and months looking for these guys, and we developed a lot of our tactics that started in Mogadishu for manhunting wise, and really perfected them in Bosnia, working with the other agencies, all the other intel agencies, and trying to work together to find an individual is not an easy thing.
Yeah.
Like it is nowadays. If they have a phone, it's like, okay, we know where you are, or any radio or anything like that. But
yeah. Oh, it's interesting how the manhunting mission has evolved over time, and even go back to Panama early days. I mean, it's essentially a manhunting mission back then,
exactly.
looking for Noriega. And of course, you tracked him down, and then you got to get him to come out of the house that he's in, and all of that. But that's essentially a manhunting mission, as is Osama bin Laden, as is Zarqawi. And so it's interesting that you're doing that in Bosnia with the PIFWICs. You were doing that in Somalia. Technology is changing on both sides. Of course, we're adapting to it. So are they, as the enemy. But gosh, it wasn't that long ago that the Olympics were in Sarajevo. I remember watching those as a kid in 84. And I remember they used to do those. I think they still do them, but they do some little kind of snippets in there at the Olympics where they go off and show the mountains, and they show as part of the culture and that sort of a thing, and highlight some of the athletes from these areas. I remember how beautiful that was. Even all these years later, I can remember watching the Olympics and remembering how beautiful it was, and then seeing the photos in that part of the world from what would happen not that long afterward.
Oh yeah. So we would do a lot of, obviously, driving around, and we'd go to the Olympic Village sometimes, and everything was just shot up, right? All the bobsled runs, all that was just big holes in it from artillery and stuff like that. And it was just very sad.
Wow. Jeez. And did you train up for that mission before you went there, or did you arrive on the ground and then kind of adapt to it in real time?
No, I mean, that's what we did, right? That was what we did. Our training was, to observe and reconnaissance, and we had the skills with the radio and all that, and so we would just tap into the intel from some of the other agencies, and they would give us a direction to look in, and we'd try to figure out a place to go where we could observe.
Yeah.
Right. And the good thing about Bosnia was it was a mix of urban and rural, right? So you could literally go up, find a nice place on a mountainside to look down on a village or whatever. There was plenty of that opportunity. It wasn't all urban stuff where you're stuck in a house. Although we did do a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah. Was there one mission that stands out to you from the Bosnia time, or a certain lesson from doing that?
You know what? It was because I was, the chief in charge of that team. The guys were doing their thing, and I was just kind of coordinating with the locals. And I always, it's a tough thing when you're dealing with local Bosnians, right? Are they loyal? Are they not? Are they going to turn you in? Are you just going to get wrapped up? And I guess that was a thing. I was always paranoid. You know what I mean? The guys were out doing their thing, and they didn't really deal with any of that. I did, right? So I'd literally go pay our rent for our buildings and different things, and the guy would make me drink with him for like a long time, and it was like some nasty. It wasn't like Jack Daniels. It was just some homemade stuff, and every day I'd say somebody has to come pick me up within in an hour or so, because I'm not going to be able to drive.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of what I remember from that. And then we had some successes. We actually located a couple guys, and then we would turn them over as guys timed out, and then turn them over to the next team, and they would eventually go grab them.
Incredible. And I know you're too humble to mention it, but Silver Star recipient from actions in Mogadishu. I mean, you've always been humble as long as I've known you, and it's just incredible, all the things that you saw and did.
I think medals are a funny thing. You know what I mean? It's a combination of I don't want to say being in the right place at the right time, but I always tell people you get medals for when things go wrong, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a good mission if you're getting or medals, right? Because something went bad, and so it's a weird thing. And then you have to have the politics side of it. Somebody's got to write it up, and it's got to get approved along the chain, and then blah blah blah. And we're kind of going through some of that right now with with some of the highest medals like Medal of Honor, and it's tough.
Yeah, the politics side of that is odd, especially when you get up there to those types of medals. You retire in 2000, and then stay on at your former command. And do you think at this point you're just going to do a couple years there and move on?
Well, honestly, it was we weren't seeing a whole lot of action at that point, right? And it was time. I'd done 22 years at that point, and I was like, yeah. They offered me a job as working in operations, and so I could continue doing what I was doing and maybe not travel as much because as you can't be a SEAL from home. You have to be on the road. And so I took the job, but that, as you know, that was right before 9/11, right? So that was a big decision at that point because 9/11 happened, literally, less than a year after I retired, and I could have went back in on active duty within a second, right? But what happened and what my decision was to stay put because the place emptied out. I mean, there was all the SEALs were gone, right? So if I felt it was better, I was in better position to support from the command than I would have if I joined, went back on active duty. First of all, they would have made me go probably to a regular team again. Once you leave and you've got to come back, that's what they make you do. And I didn't want to do that. And then the second part was, like I said, everybody was gone, and who's gonna run the place, right? So it ended up being myself and another Master Chief, Ken Corona, for many, many years, and Ken, and all at that critical time, I mean,
yeah, you guys were the continuity at that command for the longest time, and I met you. Well, I didn't meet you there. I met you when you had what you were hoping, I think, was going to be just a year, but ended up being, I think, 2, when you had to go to Great Lakes and do that job. Oh, yeah. So I passed through Great Lakes.
Did you really?
I did. So I was there.
Oh, hell, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's
95 to 97.
Yeah. So I'm there 96, summer 96. I go to boot camp.
That was hell.
Yeah. Did you get in trouble? Is that why you were there? I've always meaning to ask you that.
No. I was honestly thinking, I'm from Milwaukee, right? So it was right up the road. Kids got some grandma time, and I was just trying to figure out, what my next steps were. And after Great Lakes, I was like, I need to go back to the team right now.
Yeah, that's so fun. But that was my first experience, and we're like, oh wow, because you're a SEAL, and you're the first one that we meet essentially as guys that are on our way to BUD/S. I think there's a couple other, what do they call them? Maybe a couple people that maybe work in there in and out, maybe. I'm not sure.
But dive motivators.
Dive motivators. And I remember, so that's where I did my test. That's where I did my my swim, my run, my push-ups, my sit-ups, my pull-ups, all that stuff. And
they didn't, they don't call them requests. They call them orders, right? So Great Lakes at that time was the only place for SEAL recruiting. And it wasn't, this is before, movies and any of that kind of stuff. So that's where we got all our SEALs, is right at boot camp. And they decided that, when I went out there, that we were going to try to do the whole SEAL pre-training thing. I started that at Great Lakes.
Yeah.
And then it morphed into, everything that it turned in the last 20 years, and now it went away.
Did it go away? Yeah. They invested how many millions in it, and it was so fitter quitters. That's all we got out of it.
Military. So I don't tell a lot of people there that I actually started that, but
I read it in the book. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I read it in the book. I was like, oh, interesting, because I didn't have that when I went through. It came, it came to fruition a few years later. But for those listening and wondering what we're talking about, it's a pre-BUD/S type of a thing. I don't know if that was what it was called or not, but it was to prepare you for BUD/S, to get more guys through BUD/S. So prepare you mentally, physically, whatever. And essentially we have the same amount of attrition that we always had after all that money and investment. Because hey, it's this gauntlet and you're testing yourself and you can't really prepare too much for it. Just be in pretty good shape, as good a shape as you can, and don't quit, be tough.
Yeah. You know what? It morphed over time though. And when I did it, it was only designed to be 2 weeks to teach them very basic, like make sure you're swimming the right stroke, make sure you can do certain, you know what the skills are, or the PT thing is, but it turned into this 6-8 week thing. And that's when it went wrong. I believe, because teaching somebody the right way to swim is a good idea before they get the buds.
That is a good idea, because that was the hardest part for me, because I didn't know, like, side stroke with a flutter kick, but you're on your side, kind of like, what is this? And you don't really get taught anything. You're just kind of pushed in the pool and told to do it. So I do think maybe it'd be a good idea just to teach you the stroke, but some of the other stuff gets a little too, teaching all the nutrition that they ended up doing and mental resilience and or whatever else they're doing. I don't know. I think you just kick them in there, baptism by fire, and get after it and see who's got it. Oh, man. So I met you there for the first time. So I think you're the first SEAL that I ever met. Now that I think about it in those terms.
Probably.
Wow. Amazing. And we were always looking, because you had a little office up there over the pool. I didn't
realize that you were one of the.
Yeah, summer of '96. But you had a little office up there, kind of above that looked down on the pool, or am I making that up?
Right attached to the pool.
Yeah, so I remember I went through your office for something, I'd signed something, and we all had to like line up and sign things or whatever it was. So that was like the closest we'd been to a real SEAL. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then we go off to A schools and then to Buds from there. So I got to Buds in January of '97. But then we meet up again in March or so of 2003 when I get to SEAL Team 2, and I've already been through Buds. Now I'm an officer, and the CO at SEAL Team 2 had come from your command and wanted me to augment. So I got to be, I think it was the second, they still call them teams at the time. They weren't squadrons yet, I don't believe. I can't remember. But I get to go over, and that particular team, squadron, hadn't had an augment before. And so it was amazing. I just got thrown in I learned so much from those guys. They were all so amazing, took me under their wing. I learned so much that I would then apply to future deployments in Iraq. And you were so amazing. Ken was amazing. And it was just such a positive experience for me. I mean, the deployment, we lost a guy on deployment. Tom, I'll just say his last name starts with an R. But I learned so much on that deployment, and so much before I even left, just dealing with you in ops and what that command did. I mean, even though there's a lot of books out now and movies and that sort of thing, none of it really captures what you guys did for so long. Those books and movies and things are usually a flashpoint or someone's personal experience for a mission or something like that. But what they fail to capture, I think, is that you were in there from September 11th onward every single day, aware of every single mission, supporting every single mission, the aftermath of every single casualty. It's incredible what you guys did. Just incredible.
It was a great job. We always tell people here at the museum when things are getting stressful, we say nobody's dying, right? It's not nobody's dying. There you couldn't say that, right? Because you couldn't. So there was nobody ever quit ever, because people's lives were literally depending on it. And I know that sounds a little corny, but it's true.
True.
And that's a fact. And whether it be somebody that wants to get a hold of their wife that's having a baby, to somebody that was shot and then needs to get to whatever is happening, it means something, right? So
yeah,
that's what I loved about that command. It was laser focused on mission success, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any other place in the world where you can get that.
No.
At that level.
Yeah. Yeah. Just incredible. And yeah, I'll take those lessons with me and applied them going forward. The relationships that I made during that time, just as an augment, incredible. And I got to see the package, and I think we can talk about it now. I mean, the package at Bagram, and then Iraq happened essentially, or morph, and everybody leave me and one other augment behind, who's a more senior officer, to kind of to support what was going on at these outstations around Afghanistan with air resupply flights, close air support, all that stuff. So I got the experience of being in the train with guys working at that level and learning those tactical lessons. And then I got some of the operational lessons after the whole package, for the most part, of support picks up and goes to Iraq, and then we still have to manage and support these different outstations with supply and close air support for the things that they're doing. So I got to get that operational experience at this as part of that same deployment. So it was as you can tell, it certainly left an impression on me, as did you.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I did my time in Bagram. Wonderful place.
Yeah. Yeah. Just incredible. So you through all this time, everything that command is doing, you're a part of it. Your fingerprints are on it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was lucky. As you know, as your time as a SEAL, as you get more senior, and then even when you're in the civilian, your job just changes. You morphs. You're not the guy kicking the door down. Or you're not the sniper lining up the shot, but you go to the radio and you're calling in air support, you're managing, and then you go to the next level, where you're managing multiple things going on at once. And it was a great, I never did one job for too long. I've been at the museum longer than I've done any job in the Navy, So this has been one of my challenges here, is because I'm not used to it, right? Came from the Navy, and now I'm a civilian, and here we go.
Yeah, and
we got some very sensitive people that work for me now. One of them. Yeah.
Yes, and did you when you got out, so you do ops at Development Group for 12 years, is that right?
Yep.
For 12 years, and do you know you're going right to the SEAL Museum, or there were some other options out there?
I actually applied for it while I was there. So believe it or not, there was a guy, a good friend of mine now, Hector is his name, and he showed up at the team. He walks in my office and he wants to talk to me about the museum. And the first thing out of my mouth was like, "How did you even get in here? How did you get in here? How did you get by all the security guards? We don't even know who the hell you are." Anyway, so he talks me into it and tells me about, stress-free, the worst thing you got to worry about is like a paper cut. And I'm like, yeah, I can handle that. And then he lied. So we got here and, made the museum. The team made the museum to what it is today.
It's incredible. What's behind you right there?
That is a Black Hawk. That is the only TF-160th Special Mission Black Hawk in a museum. It's there's only two. One of them's in Fort Rucker, Alabama, and the other one's right here in Fort Pierce, Florida.
Wow.
So this is like so when you talk to 160th guys, this is like their only place of honor. It's like their own little museum. So when they show up, we open the cowling and they all sign their names to it on the inside. So we have like a lot of history inside this Black Hawk. So it flew from 1992 till 2012.
Wow.
Right. So that's a long time. Right. It was shot down 3 separate times. They put new engines in it, put it back in the air, and it's been involved in every single conflict the country's been involved in. Everything: Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, South America, Kosovo. I mean, I could go down the list. So this thing's got a lot of history. So it's really meaningful to us.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. And I think to your left, and maybe at an angle around, there's the model from. There's the lifeboat right there from Captain Phillips.
Yep, that's the lifeboat from Captain Phillips. Yep. So Captain Phillips is actually going to be here. When is it? February 24th.
Oh wow!
So, yeah, he's going to do a little event with us in Quail Valley, and it's one of the country clubs around here. So he kind of gives his perspective, and then I'm going to give the ops perspective because I was involved in that mission, and then we actually are going to have one of the snipers that rescued him here to talk about their perspective. So it's pretty fascinating. He's a great guy. I mean, couldn't be more gracious. He supports us to the hilt, as you can imagine. And he's just a lot of fun to be around.
Wow. How many bullet holes are in that thing?
I can't. Well, I'm not going to give you that story. That's the whole story I'm not going to get into. But
all right,
they're very good shots.
And then to the around a little farther around there, I think there's the 60 Minutes mock-up of Abbottabad.
Yep.
Is right over there, Bin Laden compound.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. So I was lucky enough to be at the team at that time, and we get a lot of questions about that. And what I try to, it's hard to get across that was just another mission, because we had guys all over the globe, right?
Yeah.
And in harm's way in Afghanistan and in Iraq and other places, right? In Africa. So with all that going on, that's just another mission at the time, right? So it requires planning, training, getting the things ready. Obviously very secretive, but it was just another mission until it was over, and then it became something more than that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's really hard to describe that to people, but it's like, just because they killed bin Laden, nothing changed for me or any of the other guys after that. It was just, next day, okay, we're going to go out and do this. And it's just, it continues on. So It is what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, that one, the guys that I know that were there, they didn't think they were coming back from that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing. You didn't know what the Pakistanis' capability was to shoot down helicopters. Because the second we left the border, we declared war on Pakistan at that moment. When you send a military force across the border, that's it.
Yeah, man. And you were involved in all. I mean, the time that you were there.
I was very lucky to be, and then fortunately, I'm still well connected with the guys and with everything going on, and I couldn't be prouder of all the things they're still doing. Everybody thinks about Afghanistan and how we pulled out and what a disaster that was, and which it was. But it didn't stop our guys from continuing doing God's work. I mean, they are doing some phenomenal stuff. And fortunately, it's just not getting on the news or it's credited to somebody else which is all what we want.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's awesome.
Yeah, man, incredible. You mentioned paper cuts. So, in your new job, but something a little bit more significant than a paper cut did happen to you, since you took this job. Can you talk about that a little bit?
What specifically? I mean, there's been talking about when I almost got myself shit canned. Is that it?
I know. I'm talking about your missing foot.
Oh, well, that's a whole nother story. So I was married 27 years, and my wife passed, Susan, and I met another wonderful woman. Her name's Barbara, and so we decided to get married, and we get married in Vero Beach on the beach. Beautiful, but my parents couldn't make it to the wedding, and neither could hers. So we decided to do like a wedding tour, right? So we left from Vero Beach. We went to Colorado, where she's from, got remarried at her mom's house. Then we went to Wisconsin to get remarried at my sister's house for my parents. And I thought it was going to be a really great idea to jump into my wedding, right? So I got 2,500 jumps. I've done all, day, night, combat, you name it. And I thought this would be a really good idea to be, show my folks, my abilities, right, as a Navy SEAL and jumping and everything. So, it was beautiful. My wife's dressed up in her wedding gown. It's the whole, all the chairs are set out. My kids are there. My parents are there. All the chairs are lined up, and I leave for the airport. I get to the airport, get in the plane. We're starting to circle above the wedding venue, and there was a plane lower than we were that was just for some reason like in the area, and so we obviously can't jump when that plane's there. So about 30 minutes go by. Finally, I'm like, hey, if this guy doesn't leave, we're just going to scrap it and move in, land. So 5 minutes later, the guy leaves. And okay, I said, we're going to jump. But what happened was, in the meantime, and I'm not blaming the weather on this mistake, but the weather did change and the winds changed. And I was too stupid to say, you know what, maybe it's not a good idea to do this. So anyway, I perfect jump, good exit. I'm coming in and I'm like, hey, I'm not going to make it to the drop zone. But my backup was a lake right next to my sister's property. So I was just going to go in the water like all good seals, or, you know what I mean? But in the meantime, what had happened was that the lake, it's a smaller lake, got word that somebody was jumping in to a wedding, and all of a sudden all these boaters came out into the lake where my drop zone was. Right. So anyway, it didn't matter at that point. I'm just trying to save my life, trying to get to a clear place. So as I come screaming over the top of the wedding venue at 35 miles an hour, I'm heading towards the lake. I go out of view of all the people, thank goodness, because there was a bunch of trees. And as I'm heading for the water, my right foot catches a pier. I mean, I'm like literally inches away from success here. But like I said, if I just lifted my foot, this wouldn't even be a story. But I didn't. And when I hit the pier, I hit so hard that it ripped my foot off my leg. So I land in the water, pull myself up on the dock. My foot's dangling from a piece of skin, and I yelled, "Call 911." Well, first I said the F word, then I said call 911. And then my brother and a friend come running down, and they're just like, holy shit. And then my wife, I see her running down in her wedding dress, making sure, took her shoes off. She's carrying them. She runs down. She was a firefighter in her past career, so she wanted to make sure I was still breathing. Anyway, I was like, hey, I messed up. And then there's a little controversy in this story now. So she says that I said I didn't want her to come down to the pier because my pride was crushed. And I was like going, I don't remember saying that. I was like, maybe I was in, shock. I don't know. And I was like, I never would have said something like that. Anyway, so, a year later, I run into my friend from Wisconsin, and he says, oh yeah, you said that. And I said, you're no longer my friend. Backing up my wife. Anyway, so they put me in the back of the ambulance. At that time, they give me a couple of shots of morphine, thank God for morphine. And Barb reaches in, she says, just sit up and just put your hand out and say, I do. So I sat up, she puts the ring on my finger, and I say, I do. And the paramedics in there are going, oh, no, this is not, this is not working because he's on morphine, so it's not real. So we had to go to the hospital, and they wrote her down as a fiance, even though we were already married, but because these guys thought I was drugged up and she was trying to take advantage of me. But anyway, a couple years later, it's the foot's not getting any better, and it's time to make the call. And I guess I never, when it's a SEAL thing, I guess I just never really thought there was another option. It's like, just chop it off. It's like, it's okay. I'm not gonna, I was in a lot of pain. I wasn't able to do a lot of things, and since I've had my amputation now, it's 8 years. I could do 95% of the things I used to do, right? The only problem is, like, when I'm swimming, I can't use a leg in the pool and I go in circles. But other than that,
stop it.
Good.
Do you have the attachment? Do you have the fin attachment?
No, I actually do have one with fins, but it's kind of cumbersome in the water, so I don't like work out with it.
Okay.
But if I'm actually going to do some like snorkeling or something, I'll put it on.
Man,
I have a leg for just about everything.
Wild. Oh man.
Well, here, so I got another good leg story for you. So we do a big fundraiser in New Hampshire called Swim with a Mission. So you can swim from 1K to 10K, which is a long way to swim, right? Anyway, so while we go up there, we're good friends with all the local politicians, including the Governor Sununu, and then the new governor, Kelly Ayotte. So at every one of these big events, we make them drink out of one of my spare legs. And they're good sports about it, but there's no way to actually hold the thing properly without getting beer all over the front of you. So we were just up there for inauguration, and last week, and she goes, Rick, I'm not drinking out of your leg because she can't get it all over her gown. So I said, I'll see you in July because then you will have to drink out of it. So anyway, we have a lot of fun.
Wild, gosh, and you're still doing all those things. I mean, it's incredible to see all the things that you do, have done, continue to do. And you wrote this book that I hope everyone picks up, Frogman Stories. I would have loved to have had this book as a kid, thinking about going into the SEAL teams. The way you did this is just so appropriate, how you talk about things, if that makes sense to you and to those. I mean that as the highest compliment. You're very humble throughout this book, of course, as you are in real life as well. Why did you decide it was time to capture some of these stories and lessons?
Well, as you know, it's a very fine line walking when you're a SEAL writing a book, because there's a million jokes about it, right?
Yes.
So I tried not to. Well, you don't have any issues. You're not writing about your exploits. You know what I mean? And a lot of guys tend to go that direction, and I say I can't do that. So I just wanted to go more on. This is like really fun, stupid stories about your time in the teams as you're doing things like Mogadishu and stuff like that. It's not about what I was doing. It's about just the silly stuff that you're going through. And that's so it started it when COVID hit, and went through the process, finished it up, and then my wife says, "Hey, why don't you get this thing published?" And I said, I went through the process, and I thank you very much for supporting me on that.
Of course.
And I called Admiral McCraven, and he also supported me, which was I was just like, wow, these guys are awesome, and got the damn thing published, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Now, I hope everybody picks this up. I mean, incredible everything you saw over that time frame in Naval Special Warfare.
The funny thing is, I don't even think people think I'm an author, and I'm like, I can barely speak English, right? So it's like I was just grateful to get it done. But the thing is about this book is it also helps me with the museum, right? So we have so much more here at the museum and soon to be in San Diego than just stuff, right? It's about our mindset and about how we help the next generation of kids learn about things that they don't learn about in school, right? Yeah. So about honor, courage, commitment, sacrifice, do more, be more than yourself, go do something, put your damn phone down, become somebody, be a teacher, be a policeman, be somebody, but just go do it. And that's what this museum does, right? And I think you can't put a price tag on it. We're just going to be able to reach so many more people out in San Diego. It's going to be incredible. I mean, in fact, we're not even open yet, and we're already doing at-risk kid programs with the San Diego Sheriff Department. I mean, that's the kind of impact we have. So when people think about a museum, it's 4 walls and go visit and blah blah blah, it allows us to do so much more. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it is a special place, and what you've done with it and the level that you've brought that museum to is, it is astounding. When you walk, everyone will be impressed. You can't talk it up enough, because sometimes you talk something up too much and then you go and you're like, you oversold it. You can't oversell this place. It is such an amazing museum. And like you just said, I think families, because kids need heroes today. It's just, for whatever reason, I think it's just tougher when they're on their device, like you mentioned, rather than for us growing up and having heroes in film or from books, from pages of history. It was just a little different. And so for kids to go through this museum, I think it could change the direction of their lives. Not necessarily just on the military side, but like you just mentioned, that honor, that courage, commitment, understanding what was sacrificed for them to have these options and opportunities that you have as a citizen of this country. It's beneficial for everybody to go check out the museum. It's just, I can't say enough good things about it.
Well, I invite you back, and along with all your listeners, please come visit us.
Can't
October
wait.
1st for San Diego, but Fort Pierce is wide open every day.
I got to get back there. We need to do another shot in the Mark V.
Absolutely.
We got to go do that. And talking about the museum, as you mentioned earlier, we don't do a very good job in the SEAL teams about teaching, passing on lessons, and in this case, particularly the history of the organization. What were some of the most surprising things that you learned over the past decade now, being at the museum, that you weren't aware of before?
Well, when you went through BUD/S, did you know why you were carrying around that rubber boat on your head for 6 months?
Well, I mean, no one told me, but I had seen photos and paintings of guys in World War II going up over beaches and things like that.
See, I was clueless. I didn't know any of that stuff until I got here, because I just thought it was a good way for them to torture us, right? But a lot of the things that were done, 80 plus years ago here in Fort Pierce are still done today in BUD/S. The training of officers and enlisted men together, the IBS carrying around on your head, the log PT, and I could go on and on. And I wish, and I know we are doing a better job now because the museum is involved in it. And then once we're open in San Diego, it's going to just be that much easier to have that much more impact, not only on our own community, but the public, the general public. It's going to be amazing. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And the obstacle is it obstacle clearance, is that what we call it? Well, when you go down and you attach your explosives at San Clemente Island, go on up, get that breath of air, your buddy goes down at the same time, and you're kind of going back and forth as you go through the correct procedures to blow these obstacles. I mean, there's a touch point in history, of course, for that. So I knew, but no one told me that when we were doing it. Maybe someone might have mentioned it out there, but I don't think so. But you kind of knew.
You weren't worried about it. You know what I mean? You weren't worried about
just want to pass. Just get the procedures right. Yeah. Just get these procedures correct. And don't blow myself up type of a thing. It's what you guys are doing. Incredible. Can't wait to get back. It was so fun to go out there. It's been a few years now. It was 2019, I think. So pre-COVID when I was out there. And saw
a lot more stuff in here now.
Okay. So I got to get out there and see that. And
the history is never ending, right? So, and then you got your battle axe.
Man, so look at that. That is so.
You know what though? I mean, so the art behind you is going to have to change. Though.
Yep, I think so. It's going to go over there. I'm going to replace a bow with it very soon. That is just. Thank you so much for this, and thank you so much. I mean, I've had so much respect for you ever since I met you, and that is well over 20 years ago now. Gosh, how many years? It's in 1996. So I always had the utmost respect for you. Everyone that I know does. And you have really,
everybody.
Maybe there's a couple senior level people out there, maybe. But you're one of those guys who just epitomizes earning that trident every day, both in uniform and in the years after you took it off. So thank you for that. I just sincerely appreciate it. Thank you for all you do.
Thanks for everything you do. I always remember when you first came here with your first book, Terminalist, at the Vero Beach bookstore. And now look at you.
Hey, man, I appreciate you doing that, spending so much time with me that day. That was so much fun to get to hang out for a bit together. And thank you for all you've done for this country.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for everything, and take care. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for this. Take care.
Welcome.
This episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by Cry Havoc. From New York Times #1 best-selling author Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Rees thriller. Order now.
Watch a Cry Havoc teaser here, or watch another episode of the podcast here.